If back in 2017 you told me that meditation was what was ultimately going to help me heal from chronic pain, I would have gotten pretty defensive. But was meditation what ultimately helped me to heal my more than a decade-long symptoms? If you want to find out, go ahead and keep on watching. So in 2018, I actually read the results of my board exam to get my doctorate of physical therapy from a hospital bed. I had just had a panic attack, and in that moment, I wasn't just feeling the intense pressure of passing my board exam, but probably more than that was the pressure of healing myself from more than a decade-long fight with chronic pain and symptoms. These pain and symptoms were preventing me from doing what I loved the most, and that was playing music. Music was an activity that I grew up doing, I made an identity around, I went to school for, and it was what I was doing when I had a sudden onset of symptoms that would then turn into more than a decade of chronic pain. Now, ironically, when these symptoms first started, I immediately had this intense physiological response afterwards, which I would later learn was my first panic attack. Now, if you've never had a panic attack, it's a type of intense physiological response where the brain is experiencing existential level fear and then responds as such all at once. And if you're watching this and wondering why I'm bringing up this panic attack, it's because the state of the brain in a panic attack is actually not that dissimilar from the state of a brain experiencing chronic pain. See, in chronic pain, we still have a brain that's responding in a fear-based way, but instead of this fear being short-lived and intense, it's a much lower grade kind of a fear that starts to express itself in response to a wide range of stimuli. So this fear response becomes overgeneralized and starts to color our entire experience. As this occurs, the brain literally rewires itself so that it detects threat at every corner. And as this happens, worry, fear, self-pressure, and criticism increase, and we get further and further disconnected from our body. We then get stuck in our heads, and we're so disconnected from our body that we feel desperate and trapped, and this desperation is what leads us to try anything possible to get rid of this pain. The problem here is that as we put pressure on ourselves to try to heal ourselves from pain, this pressure itself is interpreted by the brain as a threat, and then in response to that, the brain produces defensive reactions that cause real physical symptoms. These physical symptoms then become further evidence that there's something wrong with the body, and this cycle then perpetuates itself. This self-perpetuating cycle is something that I call rehab purgatory, and you're in rehab purgatory when you've had a plateau in symptoms for 3 months or more, when 80% of your exercise program are restorative or mobility exercises, and when you're spending a lot of your time trying to find the root cause or the perfect body-based solution to be able to heal your body from chronic pain. But the unfortunate reality here is that maintaining the body as the target of our interventions actually completely misses the mark in addressing the root cause. And that root cause is the brain and the way it's been wired for fear and threat. Now, by this point, it should become obvious to you that we need a brain-centered approach that gets us out of our head and back into our bodies. But what is that approach? Surely, I'm not going to be the first one to recommend meditation as a possible approach here, but does it actually work? And to answer this question, I'm going to first tell you a story about my own experience, then I'll lay out a framework that I use to use meditation for chronic pain and symptoms, and then we'll actually bring you through a guided practice so you can experience it for yourself today. So back in 2018, after this whole incident had happened with this panic attack, I was desperate to find approaches that could work with me, and I was pretty much at the point where I realized that a solely body-based or exercise-based approach was not going to cut it. So at this point, I decided it was time to look at other systems of the body, such as vision and the vestibular system. Years earlier, testing had identified that I had decreased function in my left vestibular nerve. And for those of you who don't know, the vestibular nerve is a cranial nerve that controls balance by sensing inner ear as well as body positional signals and helping to integrate those two together. So when I came across a treatment that would address vision and the vestibular system by using custom lenses and tailored exercises, I was sold. This was going to involve me going across the country to a very well-known physical therapy clinic to work with a world-renowned physical therapist as well as a neurooptometrist together to create a program that was going to involve customized lenses and exercises. So I traveled across the country, and in the session, I received the lenses as well as the customized exercises, and they assessed my body to see if it was balanced, or as they say, neutral. And so by the end of the session, I was able to achieve this state of neutrality with the lenses and the exercises. They sent me home with a program, And it was all going pretty well for a while. But during this process, I was still putting pressure on myself to heal, and I found that over time, the lenses and the exercises seemed to be helping less and less. I was falling back into my old symptoms, and I wondered if they were working. So I went to a seminar to learn more about this approach, and while I was there, I had one of the instructors test my body to find out if I was still neutral or balanced. And it turns out that I wasn't. When I learned this, I reached back out to the founder and shared what I had found, and they said that the best course of treatment would be to stop using the lenses and to come back out for a follow-up. Now, during the time between this seminar and that follow-up visit, I had developed a very strong meditation practice. And specifically during that time, I was working on meditations that helped me to recalibrate my vision and the way I was sensing my body. I was doing this through a combination of eyes open meditations, walking meditations, and sensation-based meditations that worked on direct recognition of sensation in the body. So when I arrived at the clinic, not having had worn the glasses in weeks, I was actually feeling pretty good. And I got up to walk across to the treatment table, and I overheard the founder of this physical therapy approach say to the neurooptometrist, "He's neutral without the glasses." And after testing, he confirmed that I was actually neutral without the glasses, and he even said to me, quote, "Greg, I'm really sorry that you came all this way." We talked a little bit more because I was still experiencing some symptoms, and then it was recommended that I follow up with some sort of dental intervention. Now, after doing the consultations and realizing what this would entail, I realized that this was a little bit too invasive, too expensive, and there were still no guarantees. So instead, I decided to double down on my meditation practice and see how far I could get with that. In the next several months, I'd combined meditation and other mind-based tools with movement and saw a 90% reduction in symptoms. Now, this last 10% was something that came about a little bit more gradually over the course of several months to years, but now I'm at a point where I would say I'm 99% symptom-free and usually 100% symptom-free the majority of the time. And most importantly, I've been able to get back to music and be able to play without pain or limitation. I've been doing long gigs for several hours without any sort of problem, and I was recently able to travel across the country and record an album with my friend. So can meditation work to alleviate chronic symptoms? As you can tell, in my experience, it sure can. But, and this is a rather big but, the way that you approach meditation can either make or break its ability to help you heal. So if everything goes right here, meditation can be an incredibly powerful tool to help you heal from chronic pain, and the way that it's working is by rewiring your brain. Now, this is especially going to be important when exercises stop working, but when you're doing this, you need to be approaching meditation with the appropriate intention. And what I mean by intention is why you're doing it in the first place, as well as what technique you're selecting. Because if you approach this from the wrong perspective, you're not going to be successful with the practice. That's going to be evidence that meditation doesn't work for you, which is then going to send you back to more expensive alternative treatments and send you back into that state of overthinking and get you back trapped in that cycle of rehab purgatory. So the most important point to realize when coming to a meditation practice is that the point of meditation is not to change your experience per se, but simply to recognize it. And in recognizing it, what happens is you're able to get out of your head and back into your body. The way that we do this is actually by teaching the brain how to experience the world directly rather than through a filter of thought. Now, this is not the same as trying not to think, which is something that people often think is the purpose of meditation, and it isn't. And this is also not the same as being anti-intellectual or seeing no value in thought. That's actually not the point at all. But what the point is to balance our ability to feel and be aware and sense with our ability to think logically and analyze and respond from a more cognitively driven perspective. So this is diametrically opposed to adding complex cues and exercises and treatment interventions, but instead is a subtractive approach. With this subtractive approach, we cease to be captivated by and identified with our thoughts, and by doing so, we rewire the brain and allow ourselves to feel more connected and safe in our bodies. Now, the way that we're going to do this and be a little bit more precise about it is by targeting very specific brain regions and doing this in a step-by-step process. So some of the regions that we'll be targeting include the amygdala, which is a major fear and negative emotion center in the brain, as well as the default mode network, which is an area of our brain that produces self-referential thought. And in chronic pain, most of those thoughts tend to be about how we're in pain, something's wrong with the body, and we're not going to heal. And what ends up happening through meditation is that we can actually change how connected these different regions are to the rest of the brain. We can actually shrink these regions down a little bit. And what that ultimately does is help us to have an experience that's more open and interconnected and resilient. Now, over time, we're then going to take this and integrate this into our daily lives. So instead of just being something that we can achieve during practice, this actually starts to become a new way of being. And so in many ways, I think of this as an upgrade in our experiential operating system because we really do fundamentally change the way that we're interfacing with the world. This takes us from overthinking, anxiety, pressure, and criticism to a more embodied, interconnected, peaceful, and compassionate way of being. And if you do this consistently, the overall result is less pain, tension, symptoms, and above all, the ability to engage with the activities you love without pain or limitation. And to make this even more effective, what we can do is actually integrate our knowledge of our body and its patterns into our practice. And one of the ways that we can do this is by choosing certain areas of the body or regions of the body or systems of the body as points of emphasis in our practice. For example, many of us have difficulty in sensing one side of the body to the same extent as the other. And for many of us, this is the left side. So in a second here, we're going to bring you through a guided practice that's going to help you reestablish some awareness and some sensory ability in this left side. And I think you're going to find that this produces some really great results just in one session. So before we get into the practice, I just say that the big takeaway here is that meditation can be a powerful tool to help you heal chronic symptoms, but you need to apply it in an intentional way and know exactly what you're trying to get from it and what the purpose of it is. If you go in with the wrong intention, you're going to be at risk of getting evidence that it doesn't work for you, which will send you back to the drawing board and be focusing on the body instead of giving the brain what it needs. All right, so let's go ahead and let's actually jump into the guided practice. All right, so for this meditation, you're going to take a seat in a chair and you're going to learn how to discover a non-conceptual way of knowing your body directly. So as you're sitting, bring your attention to the sensations associated with sitting. You'll feel pressure on the chair from your sit bones, the weight of your body, and any tension that might be present. Now, as you settle in, let awareness move to know the sensations in your left heel. And if you pay close enough attention, you should feel the pressure of the foot on the ground and some sense of temperature or tingling. Resolve to keep your attention on these sensations while allowing thoughts, feelings, and any other bodily sensations to pass by. And as you continue to focus your attention on your left heel, you might notice that you become lost in a train of thought or in another sensation. If this happens, simply return to the sensations in your left heel. Now, see if you feel like you're pointing attention at your heel from somewhere in your head. Do you feel like you're located behind your eyes, in between your ears? If that's the case, see what it feels like to relax this feeling while remaining aware of your left heel. If you can relax this feeling of being in your head, you'll find that there's an awareness of your left heel that's known directly without the need for constant refocusing. This feeling of sinking down below your head and coming back into your body can help you reconnect with your body directly without having to filter through thought. Okay, so that does it for this meditation. Thanks for your practice, and we'll see you in the rest of the video. All right, so hopefully that guided practice was helpful for you. Now, just a couple of questions that come up pretty commonly that you might want an answer to. So, what if you're bad at meditation, you've tried it in the past, and you've failed? So, if you're bad at meditation, usually there's some sort of misconception going on, and one of the most common ones is that the point of meditation is to somehow stop thinking. So if you think that the purpose of meditation is to stop thinking, and then you become aware that these thoughts are always arising and passing away, then you're going to feel like you're not doing it right. This will lead to frustration, and then you'll have a bad experience with it, and then you won't want to do it again. Now, the same thing can happen if you think the point of meditation is to achieve some sort of a calm or relaxed state. But in fact, the point of meditation is not to change or manipulate our state or control our body, but instead is to simply recognize how our experience already is. If we do this, paradoxically, usually the body will react in a favorable way and we'll have a better experience, but we need to actually go into the practice letting go of trying to control the body, which then in the end is what actually gives us the benefit in our body. So it's paradoxical. It's a little bit hard to know how to deal with until you experience it directly, but that's why you have to go in with the right intention and be consistent with your practice to actually see the gains. Now, another common objection that I hear all the time is, well, what if I have a structural issue? How do I know if this is structural or if this is a mind-based issue? Now, first of all, if you have some sort of an influence from your mind that's impacting your body, and let's say you do have a structural issue that is generating some of your symptoms, if you have both of those together influencing the situation, you're going to have a hard time separating signal from noise, right? So if that structural injury is really actually causing symptoms, but you have a ton of amplification from the mind, then you're not going to be able to tell what's the structural component and what's the mind-based component. So by learning to be a better meditator, you're going to positively influence your brain. And then if there is something that's truly structurally driven, you're going to be able to much more accurately determine to what extent that's playing a role. And then to take this one step further, when we really look at the mind and the body, we think of them as separate. But in fact, if we look at the brain, if we do brain scans and we say, is that a physiological reaction to something physical, or is that an emotional response? Well, it turns out that by looking at a brain scan, we can't tell because often the footprint or the imprint there in the brain, the pattern of energy is exactly the same. So instead of thinking as mind and body as being separate, think of them as two components that work together to produce your experience. So what the body does and what the mind does often mirror each other. So if you make a positive impact in one, always you're going to experience a positive impact in the other. And for some of you, you'll hear that and say, well, then I should be able to work on the body and it'll positively reduce my anxiety or other negative mind states. And yes, to an extent that's true, but let's just talk about probabilities here. if you've been doing things that are only physical and you haven't experienced that reduction in symptoms, then it's probably going to benefit you to refocus, look at this from a mind-based perspective, and I think you're going to be surprised at the impact that this has. I know that for me, it was a complete shock that my mind was able to have such a profound influence on my physical pain and symptoms, but after experiencing it directly, obviously, I now know better. So I'm hoping the same can be true for you too. All right, so if you're ready to take a mind-based approach to heal chronic pain by restructuring neural pathways in your brain, then I want you to join my brand new membership community, Beyond Biomechanics. This is where we're going to be going beyond just tedious exercises, and we're going to take a mind-based approach to moving and feeling better. The ultimate goal of this program is to allow you to feel your best and get back to the activities you love without pain or limitation. Now, the way we're going to do this is by having 2 group calls a month with the rest of our community members. There'll be guided meditation practices, a preliminary meditation course to get you up to speed, as well as pre-recorded course modules, which will lay out all my frameworks, including my 5 essential stages of healing, as well as my pressure to performance framework that's going to help you move from this disconnected state of being in your head, feeling trapped, to this open, interconnected, resilient, and limitless state. And if you're listening to this and you know that this could work for you and you've been stuck in rehab purgatory, now is the time to make a decision. Do not hesitate. If you had told me back in 2017 that this was going to help me, I wouldn't have believed you. But if you're ready to receive this message right now, then it is time. Don't hesitate right now. Go to the link in the description, click on it. This is a decision you won't regret. And even if it doesn't alleviate your symptoms and you're not pain-free by the end of it, the skills and the tools that you learn in this community will serve you in many other ways for the rest of your life. And beyond that, I'm offering a 90-day money-back guarantee, so you literally have nothing to lose. So don't let fear, failure, limiting beliefs, or anything else stand in the way of being able to achieve this healing. Go down to the link in the description, enroll today, and I'll see you inside the community. All right, so that does it for this video. Hopefully I'll see you inside Beyond Biomechanics. And until next time, peace.